Hey, welcome back. Behind me we've got a Farmall Super MTA, and over here we've got a John Deere M Industrial, an MI. If you've seen the last video, you saw me drag these out of a building at my parents' farm where they've been sitting for a few years. The Farmall quite a bit longer than the John Deere, but they're both in a state of disrepair and they are non-running. So in this video we're going to work on getting them going. So plan is to put them both in one video, but if it gets too deep we might split them into two. So as I mentioned in the last video, I want to say it's been at least 6 years since this thing was going, and I'm just going to kind of go through some basics of it. I'm sure the engine's loose. There's no way it would be stuck. It's been just sitting in the barn. I know it was parked kind of because it wasn't running great, and I think that was a carburetor issue, that it would start running better if you got the carburetor, if you pulled the choke on it. So I think we'll just check some fluids here, and we'll buy a battery and fuel and everything else. But I don't think this is going to be too hard to get going, but you never know. Start by opening the battery box here. These bolts have always been left finger tight for as long as I can remember, because it seemed like the battery was always dead, or not necessarily because of a draw, but just because this thing always had the leftover battery from some other project in it. It never got a new one, put it that way. Exactly. That's nowhere near the battery it should have in it, but it's an old deep cycle out of something. There we go. Yeah, just gonna throw in another battery that I got kicking around. It's not the greatest, but it'll do good enough to get it running for them. This one's a little rough looking. I've said to people many times, there's buildup that gets in these things that you can't brush out. Now you'll hear this sounds like almost sandy and crunchy. It shouldn't sound like that. When you scrape lead, it'll be silent. So if you got that nasty old buildup scale in there, you got to cut it out. A brush won't take it out. There, that should work. There you go, just a little block that'll take up that space. Yeah, that won't ground out. On these tractors, they do not have a dipstick. They have these petcocks in them, basically a high and a low, and you usually just want just a trickle to come out the high, and that should be good. That is pretty dark. It's definitely due for an oil change, but it's not on the list of to-dos today. I'm gonna say might as well pop the cap off here and just check the points, make sure they are clean. This thing had a tune-up not long ago. A little fuzz in there, a little dirty, but nothing bad. I do remember there being an issue. This original IH coil, I think, was giving us some problems. I know this wire was a slight issue. This tractor's always kind of, you had to get it cranking and then let off the starter switch, and then it would hit. Like the starter was drawing too much voltage. and I'm not really sure what the deal is with that. If I remember right, we had kind of solved that issue. It looks like our rotor had cleared some of the felt out of this. This looks pretty new. I don't remember putting this in. Dad might have put that in there. Looks like it's got a newer points and condenser. Like I said, this thing it's got some hours on it. It's got some play in the distributor. Definitely doesn't help it run correctly, but let me grab a file and we'll file those points really quick and put that back together. Looks like a pretty new set of points. Let's try to turn it over just to verify that the gap on them. You're probably not seeing that too good, but they're pretty tight. Those are like basically shut. That's on the top of the lobe. Wow. I wonder if it never had carburetor issues, if it was the points too tight all along and it was parked because of that. It wouldn't surprise me. Sorry for the bad shot. I don't have much room to work here. Should be 20 thousandths. These are not as friendly to set as like a Delco distributor. You kind of got to hold them and then just put the set screw in there and drop your feeler gauges in the pan of oil. Okay. And it's a little too wide. These are kind of a pain to get set correctly. Had to move you out of the way so I can actually see what I'm doing here. There, that's pretty close. That might be a touch tight, but they were like basically touching before. So our dust cap back in there. Rotor's just a touch. Rotor's just a touch dirty. Here, we'll file the contact. Put that guy on there. Put our cap back on. Okay, let's check the fuel system. All right, let's take a look at the fuel tank here. I really don't think, for as long as this has been sitting, it don't smell bad. See if you can see in there. It's got a little bit of color to it, and it's like something floating around in there. Probably an old gasket from the fuel cap, but it don't look too bad. And it doesn't smell that bad. Let me see if we can get good flow to the carburetor. And if that's the case, I might dump a little bit of fresh fuel in there to dilute it. And we'll go from there. So, good news is the fuel bowl is turned off. I don't know how long it has been, but I'm going to pull the line loose at the carburetor here, and we're going to see if we can get some fuel flowing. If that seems to be flowing well, then I'm going to pull the plug in the bottom of the carburetor, see if we can get fuel flowing out of that. Put that there to catch our fuel. Might need a line wrench for this. Oh, there we go. No, there's a little filter in there. It's been a few years since this line's been off, that's for sure. we go. Okay, I'm gonna turn the fuel bowl on here. Yeah, could have saw that coming. Well, now the floor's clean in that spot, at least. Yeah, we'll try that instead. That'll balance there a little better. I just want to make sure we're getting a good flow and it doesn't start like chugging or anything. That's plenty. So there's nothing clogged up in the sediment bowl. And while that's moving, the bowl itself is staying clean, so we don't really have anything clogged up in there. So let's pull the drain on the carburetor and go from there. Well, actually, let's pull this. I believe that's a little filter in there. That is, it's pretty old fuel though. It shouldn't be that yellow, that's for sure. And that little screen pulled out of there. For the most part, other than some green gunk growing on where it was soldered, that looks fine. Yeah, I don't think anything's wrong with this carburetor. I think he parked it just because that points were closed up and he didn't realize that was the issue. Clean this off while we're at it. You know what? I've kind of changed my mind. I think it's best to drain this old fuel and I'll use it to flush out the tank on that John Deere, because we're gonna need some sacrificial fuel for that. So I'll just drain what's out of this tank and I'll put fresh gas in this tractor. Well, while that's draining into that can, let's check in the radiator and see what the coolant looks like. This radiator's not that old. It was put in, I don't know, less than 10 years ago. It's up there, but it's at the, come on, focus. There you go. Ugh, it's looking a little dirtier than you'd want it to, but there's a little bit, so let's add just a touch of coolant to this thing. That should be enough. Yeah, it's got us up above the tubes, so that'll work. This thing's been draining for a while, and I just checked into the tank, and it's had way more fuel in it than I thought to. It's still up to like here, so that's at least like 5 gallons. So I've got a little bit of this non-ethanol 90 octane. I'm just going to add a little bit in there as that's draining, and that'll kind of keep it flushed around, and then we'll go from there, because I don't need that much old fuel for anything. So this is 3/4 full. It'll work for flushing that other tank out, and I think it's still good enough to run. It doesn't smell too bad. Got a little bit of it in there to dilute this out, so shut the fuel back off, hook the carburetor up. I'm gonna pull the drain plug on the carburetor. We're gonna run a little bit through that. Just verify that we're getting good fuel through the carburetor, and go from there. This little plug here should, I believe, be a carburetor drain. Except it's been chewed up by a pair of vice grips a few times. And it's gonna get that one more time. There we go. Now, I am afraid that this carburetor sat with fuel in it for 6 years and that it's got tar in it. So, let's see what comes out. Definitely worse smelling fuel, but there's no rust or tar on that plug. So I think we got lucky. Well, you see that green color? This is not quite tar, I don't think, in there, but it was on the verge of turning into it. So let's flush that out with the fresh fuel. Yellow's okay, but you see it turning green like that? That's when you got issues. Oh, good. Okay, the needle is not stuck, so we're able to get fuel through. Let's fill the bowl up. Hopefully the float still works correctly, because that's sometimes what you'll get, it start getting sticky where it's evaporated and it's green underneath. I think we got lucky with this one. All right, let's put the drain plug back in and hope that this thing holds fuel and shuts off correctly. You keep an eye on this, see if it starts dripping. Well, that's not what we wanted to see. And give it a couple raps with a hammer, see if it'll seat. Pull this off, see how bad it's filling up the intake. Once again, the floor is going to be really clean in this spot. I think it quit. I think it sealed up. But there for a minute, it was not. All right, I seem to have been able to get that needle and seat to seal up. We've got okay-ish fuel in the tank. It's got coolant in it now. It should have spark. I don't see why it wouldn't. Got that fresh old half-dead battery in there. I don't know. I think I'm gonna give it a shot, see if it'll fire up here. All right, let's hop up here and give this thing a go. So we got neutral. This should be power on. I would have thought that you would have seen something. Oh, we do have power. We got headlights. Give her a little bit of throttle there. Top one's the choke, bottom one's your starter. So let's give her a shot. Look at that. It's running good too. Charging. Lots of familiar sound. It's been a few years since I heard this thing going. Sounds pretty good. All right, we've got the air cleaner hooked back up. It's sitting here idling nice, and we can take it for a drive. Good oil pressure. Got a little temperature built in it. Let's see, what are these? I believe that should be third right there. It smells like it hasn't run in a while. Be a mouse nest on that manifold burning off.
rusty enough for road gear today. We're on that old fuel. That's one thing, this got a heck of a road gear in it. Hear that kind of click there. That's that left brake. The springs are weak in it, so it wants to lock up if you don't put it back in reverse to release the discs. All right, look at that. Got a little bit of oil burning off under there. Yeah, she's running good. It really didn't take all that much to get it going again. I thought there was an issue with the carburetor and that's why it got parked, but it had to be those points were basically closed. That's because there's not a thing wrong with it now. Well, I mean, there's lots of little things wrong with it, but you know, it's running. Yeah, this is a cool little tractor. So we'll have to send it over to my sister and brother-in-laws and they can work on it now. Well, we'll run it back in the shop here. It could use some air and a couple tires. Okay, well, we got the tires aired up on it, front and back, where they belong. They said this left rear, I mean, you could probably save it yet, maybe boot it or something, but that's not good. That's gonna let go. I think, I don't know, that might be the tube in there. It may be, it's not great, but that's not my problem. They can find some tires for the thing. I just wanted to get it running for them so they could, you know, kind of get a head start into fixing it up or taking it to plow days or whatever they want to do with it. But it's sitting here, so let's see if it'll fire back up, and if it fires up as easily when it's hot. It should. So, ignition on, starter. Oh yeah. And it actually fired as I was cranking it. So that's something that, I remember that was a problem in the past that we had with it. It would kind of seem like it draw too much voltage, but I think I put that new wire on the coil and that kind of solved that issue years ago. But anyways, this one's good to go. So let's start on that. I think as easy as this one was to get going, that one's been running since. I think I can hopefully the carburetor's not too messed up. I can flush the fuel, charge the battery, and this thing will fire up. All right, let's take a little bit of closer look at this thing. So it didn't seem like the battery was charged. The fuel in it looks like tar. So let's yeah, that doesn't look great at all. I don't remember this tank being rusty whatsoever. So I'm guessing that's from the fuel. Coolant in this had the radiator replaced at some point, and does have coolant in there, so that's good. This needs the proper neck put into it, and I might do that one of these days. I got the old radiator yet. We can remove the solder, pull it out, and put this in. This is a cheapie, and it shouldn't be pressurized, and doesn't fit. It's, yeah, is what it is. See the oil in it. Oil looks pretty good. I think he changed the oil. Maybe I changed the oil, I think, because like within the last few years, because the oil filter, the gasket had split here and it was starting to pump oil out. And I think when I did the brakes on the back, I did the oil and filter. So let's get a battery charger on this thing, and we'll get the fuel line pulled off and see if we can flush some fuel through it. And hopefully this carburetor's not gummed up, because that carburetor this thing ran excellent for what it is. And hopefully it didn't get messed up from sitting, but could be. This battery, I think, is only a couple years old. I'm surprised that it's dead. And this is positive ground tractor, so that's why it's hooked up that way. Okay, I think we want it there. Should, I think, it's one of those smart chargers. It's always a pain. Let's see, that would be, yeah, that would be fine. Boost mode on, yeah. I think that's all right. Yeah, that'll get her going. Actually, because of that, I'm curious if it's drawing correctly, if it's even try to turn over. Yeah, okay, it's drawing. That's what we need. Alright, splash oil everywhere. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, we'll just start by seeing the state of what's in this sediment bowl here. It's started to, it's turned to varnish in the bottom here. Man, it's a real disappointment when stuff like this happens when it's totally preventable. Yeah, this thing's all coated in varnish. And it was running like a couple years ago, but the fuel was old. And it gets worse when you leave, the tanks get low. This seems to happen worse than when they're, you know, half full or so. Okay, well, let's hope that we can still get some coming through it. Gotta be about one of the worst mechanical smells is varnished gasoline. Pull this fuel line off the carburetor and hope we can do some flushing this way. Well, it seems like it's full in the carburetor since it's coming out here, so with any luck the carburetor will be full of fuel. I'm gonna open the drain on the bottom. Yeah, it's okay. We might get lucky here. There's varnish in the bowl and in the tank, and we've got that green looking fuel coming out of the carburetor. You know, if this would have sat probably one more year, it would really mess things up, but I think we've gotten lucky here. If this wasn't full, I think it would have gave area for this to turn into varnish, but I think we're good. So I'm gonna pour some fuel in the top of the tank, and that's gonna flush through the sediment bowl and the line here. Obviously our sediment bowl gasket did not fit in there correctly. It's all right. Everything's gummed up. See if some fresh fuel is gonna kind of break this varnish loose. Usually you gotta have something pretty hot, like an acetone. Sometimes the non-ethanol 90 will break it loose, or even, I've heard that ethanol fuel, like high ethanol content, will help it. Okay. Try that again. Now it should come out over here. Yeah, that's what we want. So I'm gonna let most of that kind of drain through, and then as it's draining, I'm gonna mix in a little bit of that non-ethanol 90, kind of bring it back around to something flammable. Hoping this will dissolve some of that tar in there, because the tanks on these tractors, they have a neck that goes way down almost to the bottom of the tank. And I don't know if there's another baffle in them or not, but you can't get in there to clean them out very well. So we'll just put most of this in there and hope that it cleans it up. Okay, this has been flushing for quite a while, and even the valve here on the fuel bowl is kind of freeing up. So I'm gonna hook the carburetor back up and flush some fuel through that. And then fingers crossed again that this guy fires up pretty easy. And got the drain valve open here on the bottom of the carburetor. So let's turn that fuel bowl back on. And we'll let some flush through until we get some good clean fuel. Even this is all gummed up, like it doesn't want to turn very good. This used to turn like with your finger. Like you go. There we go, fill the carburetor up. I hope it don't start dripping out the other side. Good chance it might. I honestly, I think we might be all right. Let's shut this valve off, and whichever way you turn it here now. Leave it running while I turn it, help clean the tar off those threads. Okay, that's shut off, and now that's leaking. Give it a couple wraps for good measure. That needle's sticking. Might as well put a fresh gasket in this sediment bowl while we're working on it. It's a rubber one in there, and they never seem to last really good. Go. Usually know you got them sealed up pretty good when you turn it back on and the fuel barely comes in, because it's got an airlock from the carburetor being full. So that should be sealed up well. Now this might be wishful thinking, but I'm not even gonna touch the ignition. It should be good. This thing didn't run that long ago. I'm just gonna give her a try here. Might have to kick the battery charger up a little higher, but I think it'll fire up. All right, let's turn usually run it on high charge. Give it, oh, the throttle's a little stiff. Full choke. And give her a tug here. Yeah, we're gonna have to kick this thing up to engine start. Battery's just so dead. Engine start on, okay. All right, now we'll give her a try. Man, that maybe don't have spark. Yeah, maybe we gotta clean the points on it. Let's clean the points. Luckily, it's pretty simple on these guys. It's right out in the open. Took this guy up out of the way. This had a tune-up at some point. Rotor's a little bit cooked there, but nothing out of the ordinary. Well, it's handy. It fell right on the high lobe. Make sure those are de-energized. Probably get zapped. And a points file between them. Okay, the gap looks pretty good there. Let's see, we got 20 thou. It's probably pretty close to what it should be. It's a touch loose, but that's all right. I definitely prefer this style of adjustment over the international style of just one screw and hold it with your finger. This is a not nicer setup. I'm gonna flip the ignition on, and then good easy way, if you've got it open and you got power, you can just stick your screwdriver in between here, and if you start getting spark, you're generally gonna have fire. Yeah. So what, we should be good now. Probably just had a little crust over the top, and that file should have taken care of it. That. Put our cap back on. Give it a go. All right, we should have spark now. Let's give it a go. I'm guessing it's probably drawn plenty of fuel in at this point. So just hit the start. Neat sounding little guys. They're not like the big lugging horizontals. See, we got oil pressure built up. I think the amp gauge does work. Turn this guy off. Running a touch rich there. There we go, choke's off. Carburetor might be a little dirty. Yeah, we got the choke on. It won't run without the choke on, so carburetor's a little dirty. So pull that apart and clean it. Don't know if I have a gasket to fit that bowl or not. That's what it's kind of known for. This one's always ran. I got the carburetor, well, I used to have it tweaked pretty good. Now the choke's got to be on, but this thing would just, you put it in gear and it'd just toot, 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 you know, barely move. Because that's got to be running like 100 RPM or something, and these are, I don't know, they're a tiny little stroke, like I think they're like a 4x4, 4-inch bore, 4-inch stroke, 2-cylinder, so. Well, let's take it outside and run it. Even if the carburetor's a little funky, I can wait and get cleaned another day. All right, let's take this thing for a spin. The old loader mounts are not real kind on your legs there. Hang over a bit. Let's see, what was the shift pattern on this? Over and to the left. Been a while since I drove this thing. It's kind of neat the brakes work. Nobody else has ever driven this thing with working brakes. And they work really good. I put new balls and springs and bolts, and I think I had to weld some stuff up, new discs. Alright, so we're in third gear. Blazing. A little funky. Definitely gonna need the carburetor cleaned. Is charging. Kind of a neat little tractor. Take up a lot of space. This one's got the same smell of like burning cobwebs. Alright, let's try road gear. If that carburetor's got enough guts to. Oh yeah, a little doggy. That's throwing some hot stuff out the exhaust. Show you what it's known for. So first gear, usually that's enough to get it to win a slow race. It moves pretty darn slow. I mean, you can see the fan turning in there. She's not moving too fast. Get a little walk around of it. We'll bring her back to the barn. It needs some air in the tires. So. This thing's hard to steer, needs the steering box rebuilt. Alright. That's enough of that two-cylinder nonsense. Okay, well, what do we got here? So this is, like I said, John Deere MI. That's a Super MTA. This one is going to go off to live with my sister and brother-in-law, and I mean, I hope they restore it. I'm sure they someday have plans to restore it. You know, everybody has busy lives, but it would be worth restoring. This one here, I wouldn't mind restoring it, but as I mentioned before, my dad is, I don't know, he gets like a hair up his butt about how things should be, and he's got this thing in his head that this loader has to stay on it. And like I said, you guys should see some pictures. If not, I'll put a picture in here to remind you how ugly it is and hard steering and stuff. But I'd love to find the correct factory fenders for this tractor and basically kind of put it back to how it should be when it was new. I would leave the front rims, I'd leave them wide, and we could put a wide implement tire on them or something. But find the factory fenders for the back, see if I could get this touch control box working. I think that's not super common, but I'm sure there's parts out there. But I mean, the rest of the tractor is not too bad, you know. Really, you could clean it up and paint it, and it would be presentable. Get rid of that goofy angled muffler and put a straight one back on it. But it's going to need a little bit of tinkering here yet. Like I said, definitely got to put some air in the tires. These have, can you see one of them? Yeah, there you go. You can. Has the old style umbrella inner tube valve cores, and those are probably going to leak when I go to put air in these tires. So I need to address that pretty quickly. Carburetor, I'm going to have to clean the carburetor. It's, you know, it doesn't want to run with the choke off, so that'll have to be done. But yeah, so maybe you'll see more on this in the future, and if they do some work to that thing, I can show it off a little bit. And yeah, not too bad to get these two running. I really thought it was going to be worse. That one really surprised me. I didn't expect it just to be, basically, he parked it because the points were closed up. So that's a pleasant surprise. And this guy here, that was kind of a bummer because that tank was clean and the carburetor was clean and it ran great, and there was no issues other than it sat and nobody's done anything with it. So we'll try to keep it running from here on out, but maybe look for this thing getting fixed up in the future on a video. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching me bring these two old hunks of iron back to life. It really wasn't too big of a job. Hopefully it was still interesting to you, and hopefully I didn't ramble on too much. I just know a little bit more history about these machines than I do about most of the others that I work on, so trying to throw in some information there, and hopefully it didn't bore you too much. But if you like this kind of stuff, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I got lots of other videos on reviving old machines like this, and some way more difficult than these two were. But maybe keep an eye out for these two in the future. I'm not sure what is going to happen between the pair of them. Hopefully that Farmall will get fixed up and it'll be looking good one of these days. But appreciate y'all watching. If you could leave a comment, leave a like, appreciate all that stuff. If you got memories with machines like this, I'd love to hear about them. And it is all appreciated, and I will hopefully see you on the next one.